What would you do if you found a forgotten book sealed inside a dusty basement? A book so dangerous it was burned in public squares, banned by the church, and silenced by spiritual institutions for centuries. It wasn't fiction. It was a roadmap. 31 days, step by step, describing exactly what happens to your soul after your final breath. Not heaven, not hell, not purgatory, but a transformational journey so intimate, so universal. It echoed across Egyptian tombs, Tibetan scrolls, African oral traditions, and even forgotten Amazonian rituals. Why was this knowledge buried? Because it doesn't just describe death, it explains life, and why so many of us are trapped in fear, confusion, and suffering. Long before our time comes, today for the first time we'll walk this forbidden path. You'll see why day 3 is when most souls get lost, why day 13 may be the most emotional reunion you'll ever witness, and why your actions today may still echo on someone else's day 28. This isn't about religion, it's about remembering what your soul already knows, but forgot when you were born. So stay until the very end, because once you see what happens after death, you might finally understand how to live. Let's begin. What if different cultures told the same story, without ever meeting? Long before hospitals, electricity, or even written language, our ancestors knew something most of us have forgotten. From the silent sands of Egypt to the icy peaks of Tibet, from the red earth of Africa to the sacred smoke of Amazonian rituals, civilization spoke of a path, an invisible thread the soul must follow after death. In ancient Egypt, this path was mapped in the Book of the Dead. A soul, or Ba, would leave the body and face a series of trials, judgment, reunions, and vibrational tests, before passing into the eternal field of reeds. It wasn't punishment or reward, it was purification, preparation. In Tibet, the Bardo Thodol, known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, describes stages of consciousness that unfold over several days. Visions appear, illusions dissolve, the ego is challenged. Ancestors and enlightened beings may guide the soul, or if unprepared, it may fall back into samsara, the cycle of rebirth. Among the Dogon people of Mali, the soul journeys through energetic spirals, reconnecting with the Nomo, ancestral spirits of wisdom. In indigenous Amazonian cosmologies, the path after death includes forests of memory, rivers of sorrow, and celestial bridges guarded by spirit animals and ancestral shamans. So how is it possible that all of them, separated by oceans and millennia, spoke of a journey lasting between 28 and 31 days? These were not random tales. They were codified blueprints, encoded in rituals, chants, and symbols. Even the moon cycle, 29.5 days, was honored not just as a celestial rhythm, but as a metaphor for the soul's transition from the darkness of the new moon, death, to the fullness of the soul's rebirth. This 31-day path wasn't about fear. It was a sacred map of transformation. But somewhere along the way, the map was hidden, burned, silenced. Why? Because a soul that understands this journey is not easily controlled. It no longer fears death, and it begins to live with purpose. That's why in the next section, we'll reveal the manuscript they tried to erase from history, and the hidden truth of what happens after your final breath. Curious yet? Let's dive deeper. What if the soul came with instructions, hidden in a book you were never meant to read? They say it was discovered inside a clay jar, sealed with wax and prayer. Others claim it was never written, but channeled, dictated, by a spirit through the trembling hand of a monk during a 40-day fast in the Himalayas. No one agrees on the origin, but one thing is certain: the manuscript exists, and it describes in chilling detail what happens to the soul after death, day by day, for 31 days. It begins not with death, but with a vibration, a subtle hum, like wind through a cave. The moment the body exhales its final breath, the soul doesn't leap to heaven. It waits, in silence, in confusion. The early pages describe this phase as the unbinding, a slow peeling away of what we think we are. Muscles relax, Vision fades, but awareness lingers. Detached from the body, the soul floats, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, unsure of what just happened. The manuscript warns that many souls don't realize they've died. They try to speak, move, scream, but no one hears. This is why rituals matter, not for the dead, but for the living who help guide them forward. Its language is poetic, symbolic, strangely universal. It speaks of mirrors without reflection, rivers made of memory, doors that appear only when fear is released. But most haunting is this line, repeated again and again. What you believe, you will see, but what you feel, you will become. That's why this book was feared, because it didn't align with religious doctrine or power. It empowered the individual soul. It suggested that you are the creator of your afterlife moment by moment, based not on external judgment, but your vibration, your choices, your energy. This manuscript was no myth. Fragments have been found in old monasteries. Whispers of it appear in Sufi poetry, Taoist scrolls, even encrypted within Gregorian chants. And in the next section, we begin walking through the first 3 days of this journey, where the soul faces its most disorienting challenge, realizing it's no longer in a body, but hasn't let go. If you've ever wondered what the moment after death feels like, don't miss what comes next. Days 1 to 3, separation from the body and the phase of denial. The body dies, but the soul still thinks it's alive. Imagine waking up in your room, but your body is still lying in bed. You scream, but no sound comes out. You wave your hands, but no one reacts. You try to touch someone, but your fingers pass through them like mist. Welcome to day 1 of the journey. According to the forbidden manuscript, the first 3 days after death are marked by one overwhelming emotion: denial. Not denial as a choice, but as a reflex of the soul, still tethered to its human experience. It doesn't realize the machine has stopped, the heart no longer beats, but awareness remains intact. On day 2, the soul begins to feel weightless, but not free. There's an aching pull downward toward the body. It sees loved ones crying, doctors cleaning, strangers passing, but no one sees it. This is where many souls get stuck, confused, afraid, grasping for the familiar. Some try to possess objects, others scream to be heard, and some, if emotionally unprepared, simply refuse to move on. The manuscript refers to this as the veil of clinging, a liminal state where attachment becomes a prison. If the soul doesn't begin to let go, it risks becoming what ancient mystics called a wandering echo, a presence stuck between realms, endlessly replaying its final moments. By day 3, the soul is offered a choice. Not a voice, not a doorway, but a sensation, a subtle invitation to rise. Those who trust it, who surrender to the unknown, feel lifted, drawn toward a warmer presence. Those who resist stay cold, confused, looped in memories of the body. This is why death rites across cultures emphasize the first 3 days. Tibetan monks chant non-stop. Egyptians performed opening of the mouth ceremonies. In Brazil, candles stay lit. In Africa, drums are played to help the soul recognize the shift. These are not just rituals, they are guidance systems, spiritual compasses to help the soul navigate this earliest stage of detachment. Because once the soul truly understands that it's no longer alive, the real journey begins. By day 4, the fog of denial begins to lift. The soul starts to understand, I am no longer alive. But with this realization comes something far more confronting. A presence, not divine, not external, but a mirror. Living, breathing, vibrating. According to the manuscript, this is the stage of inner judgment. There is no courtroom, no voice saying you were good or you were bad. Instead, the soul experiences a radical immersive life review, but not as an observer. It becomes every person it ever affected. When it caused pain, it feels that pain. From the other side, when it brought joy, it bathes in that warmth, multiplied. There is no ego filter. No excuses, only resonance. This isn't about shame, it's about recognition. The manuscript calls it the mirror of return, a space where the soul reabsorbs the energy it left in the world. It's not punishment, it's balance. On day 5, the soul may cry, though it has no eyes. It may ache, though it has no heart. Because the sensations are not physical, they're vibrational, and they carry weight. Here, many souls fall into despair, especially those who lived inauthentically, who betrayed their own values, or who harmed others without ever seeking healing. But, and this is crucial, the manuscript emphasizes, even in this stage, forgiveness is possible. Forgiveness doesn't come from above. It arises when the soul accepts what it did and sends love backward in time. This act of compassion ripples through its own memory stream, rewriting, resonance and softening future steps in the journey. By day 6, the soul starts to see patterns, decisions repeated, lessons ignored, hearts opened too late. Some souls begin to understand why they chose the life they just lived and what they were meant to learn. And on day 7, the mirror fades. Not because judgment is over, but because the soul has seen what it needed to see. This week isn't about morality, it's about energy, about alignment. The manuscript ends this chapter with one sentence. The weight you carry into the next realm is not measured in sin, but in resonance. Now the soul must face its next challenge, a journey into the subconscious, the hidden fears and emotional scars that linger like shadows. In the next section, we'll enter days 8 to 10, where the soul must cross the liminal labyrinth, a place shaped entirely by its own wounds. By day 8, the soul approaches what the manuscript calls the threshold, a boundary not marked by doors or gates but by vibration. This is where the outer world fades entirely, and the inner world expands. The soul is now fully untethered from the physical body, but that doesn't mean it's free, because now, it must walk through the labyrinth, a symbolic terrain built from everything the soul tried to avoid in life. Fear, guilt, shame, regret, attachment, anger. These emotions don't appear as ideas. They manifest as landscapes, a foggy forest filled with whispers, an endless hallway of locked doors, a room where no one speaks your name. Each soul's labyrinth is unique. Some are dark and terrifying. Others are sad and nostalgic, but all are echo chambers of the soul's unresolved emotions. On day 9, the soul begins to encounter illusions, phantoms from its own memory, a childhood betrayal, a toxic love, a missed opportunity. Each one speaks, tempts, accuses, begs. The manuscript warns, do not follow the shadows, do not fight them, see them, name them, and let them pass. This is a test of recognition, not resistance. The more the soul clings to its pain, the deeper the maze becomes. But each moment of acceptance lights a torch, and with every torch, the way forward becomes clearer. By day 10, the soul reaches the heart of the labyrinth, a space known as the still point. Here there is silence, not peace, yet, but potential. Some souls collapse here. Unable to forgive themselves, they create echo loops, replaying the same trauma over and over. Others, through deep surrender, rise, lighter, clearer, prepared for what lies ahead. Because after facing one's own shadows, the soul is finally ready to receive others. In the next phase, from days 11 to 13, the soul encounters those who came before, its ancestors, mentors, and spiritual companions, who arrive not with judgment, but with open arms. If you've ever felt that someone was guiding you from the other side, you're about to find out why. Days 11 to 13, the encounter with the ancestors. You thought you were alone. You never were. By day 11, something changes in the air. The echoes quiet down, the shadows recede, and for the first time since death, the soul feels seen. It's subtle at first, a scent from childhood, a voice that sounds like home, the vibration of a name only one person ever used. Then, slowly, they appear. Not as ghosts, not as hallucinations, but as presences, familiar, wise, radiant. Some are ancestors you knew, a grandmother who always believed in you, a father who left too soon, a friend who never said goodbye. Others are older, mysterious figures from generations past. You recognize them without understanding how, because what connects you is not memory, but lineage, a soul family that stretches beyond blood, beyond time. The manuscript calls this the circle of return, a toi, sacred reunion where the soul is welcomed, embraced, and reminded of what it truly is. Not broken, not unworthy, but eternal, and never alone. On day 12, these ancestral guides begin to share, not with words, but with vibration, symbols, and light. Some offer wisdom, others offer healing. Some simply hold space, allowing the soul to weep, release, and finally rest. There are no demands, only love. And yet, their presence has a purpose. Because as day 13 arrives, the soul is presented with its first major choice. Will you return or ascend? The ancestors don't decide, they don't push. They simply remind you, you are free. But you are responsible for your frequency. This part of the journey reveals a deep, universal truth. That your soul has never been walking alone, and that, even in your darkest hours on earth, you were held by generations who prayed for you without ever knowing your name. This sacred encounter marks a turning point, because next, from days 14 to 16, the soul will face its first vibrational crossroads, a choice that cannot be made with logic, only with energy, and the destination of the soul depends entirely on how it vibrates. By day 14, the soul stands at an invisible threshold, not a place, but a vibration. It's not told where to go, it's pulled. This stage is called the resonant crossroads. According to the manuscript, every soul emits a subtle frequency based on the life it lived, its emotions, actions, intentions, and inner growth. There are no punishments, no rewards, only alignment. The soul can be drawn toward three general paths: reincarnation, returning to the material world for another cycle of learning, ascent, rising into lighter realms of higher consciousness and unity, stagnation, remaining in dense, unresolved planes where growth is delayed. The choice isn't intellectual, it's magnetic. Souls heavy with resentment, fear, or unprocessed trauma tend to loop back into denser layers, what many interpret as lower realms. Souls filled with clarity, love, and self-awareness rise effortlessly. On day 15, the soul is surrounded by energies, beings, sounds, symbols that resonate with its internal state. Each option feels different, but no one decides for the soul. The manuscript says, your destination chooses you, based on what you carry, and by day 16 the choice is sealed, not as fate, but as reflection. Next comes a phase of deep remembering. Days 17 to 20, the plane of memories before you leave. The earth behind. You must return to where you left yourself. On day 17, the soul begins to drift through what the manuscript calls the fields of echo, a surreal landscape shaped by memory. Here, the soul is invited to revisit the most emotionally charged moments of its life, places it loved, people it hurt, joys never fully embraced, wounds never properly healed. These aren't judgments, they are anchors, parts of the self still entangled in the material plane. On day 18, the soul is gently urged to let go, to forgive, to bless what was, because holding on is what pulls a soul back into dense cycles of rebirth. Some memories offer closure, others offer unbearable longing. By day 19th, a clarity begins to dawn. Much of what seemed important in life was noise, and what truly mattered was love, connection, truth, On day 20, the soul releases its last attachments, not with force, but with compassion, and in doing so becomes light enough to ascend. But to do so, it must first remember something even deeper. Days 21 to 24, expansion of consciousness. This is where you remember who you were before you were born. From day 21 onward, the soul enters the temple of origin, a symbolic space where the ego dissolves and the soul's original blueprint is revealed. Here, the soul remembers its intention before incarnating, the lessons it chose to explore, the agreements it made with other souls, and the karma it willingly accepted as opportunity for growth. On day 22, this memory isn't just intellectual, it's experiential. The soul feels its pre-birth state of wholeness. It sees that nothing was random, even the pain had purpose. By day 23, the soul enters a state of pure presence, beyond language, form, or identity. It experiences love not as an emotion, but as the structure of reality. And on day 24, the soul becomes aware of unity, the interconnection of all things. It no longer identifies as me, but as a thread in the great cosmic fabric. This is the peak of consciousness. But before transition, one final tuning must occur. Days 25 to 27, vibrational attunement. You don't go to a place, you go to a frequency. The manuscript describes these days as syntonization final, the final attunement. On day 25, the soul is surrounded by sound, not music as we know it, but harmonic frequencies that correspond to different spiritual planes. Each soul naturally resonates with a frequency that determines its destination. There are dense planes where lessons are heavy, slow, and often painful. There are neutral planes filled with reflection and planning, and there are high planes radiant with compassion, creativity, and formless bliss. By day 26, the soul is tuned like an instrument. Every unresolved issue still vibrating within will pull it towards certain realities. But every act of love, forgiveness, and awakening raises its tone. On day 27, the tuning completes. The soul now rings in harmony with the next realm. And that realm begins to open. But before the final transition, there's one last influence. And it doesn't come from the soul. It comes from the living. Days 28 to 30, final influence from the living, even in death. Love reaches you. These are the final 3 days, and strangely, they are the most influenced by those still alive. On day 28, the soul is still sensitive to vibrations from earth. Prayers, tears, forgiveness, anger, music, memories, all of it reaches the soul as energy, waves of emotional frequency that can soothe or disturb. This is why, across traditions, the days following death are so sacred. Rituals, chants, candles, mantras, they're not for comfort, they're for connection. On day 29, the soul absorbs these final offerings. A sincere prayer can bring peace. An unspoken, "I'm sorry," can lift a weight. Even silence matters, if filled with presence. By day 30, the soul begins to turn away. The doorway opens. The human world begins to fade. And finally, comes the last step. Day 31, the final passage. No one comes with you, but you're not alone. On day 31, the cycle completes. The soul, now shaped by every choice, thought, emotion, and memory, crosses the final veil. The manuscript calls this the Great Entry, not a place, but a return. Some souls merge with light, others rest in dreamlike realms of healing. Some return to the cycle, reborn, not as punishment, but as progression. There is no end, only transitions. The final words of the manuscript read, "You are not the body. You are not the name. You are the breath before the first breath, and the silence after the last one." And with that, the soul steps through. If the soul has 31 days after death, What can you do with the days you still have? This isn't just a story about what happens after you die. It's a mirror asking you, what are you doing with your life now, before that journey begins? Here are 5 powerful takeaways from the 31-day journey of the soul that you can apply immediately. Resolve. Don't repress. The soul carries everything it didn't process. Unspoken pain, unforgiven moments, unlived dreams. Ask yourself daily, what am I holding on to that I need to let go of? Start small. Write letters you never send. Apologize without needing a reply. Honor your truth. Heal your frequency. Your thoughts and emotions shape your soul's vibration. Practice rituals that elevate your frequency. Gratitude, mindful breathing, silence, forgiveness. Remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about being present and honest. Honor your ancestors. You are not an isolated being. You are a continuation of thousands of lives that came before you. Light a candle. Say their names. Even a whisper of gratitude can awaken a deep sense of connection. You're never walking alone. Live as if you're remembering, not learning. This journey suggests that your soul already knows. So instead of asking, what should I do with my life? Try asking, what did I come here to remember? Purpose isn't something you find. It's something you recall when you slow down enough to listen. Treat every day as day. You don't need to wait until death to begin your spiritual journey. The same awakening that comes after the final breath. Begin with the next one you take. Each morning is a portal, each night is a reflection, and your entire life is the preparation for your soul's next step. We began this video with a mystery, a lost manuscript that maps what happens to the soul after death. But now we return with a revelation. You're not watching this by accident. Your soul brought you here because something in you is ready to remember. So here's a question to carry with you. If your soul began its 31-day journey tonight, what would it still be holding on to? Let us know in the comments. What part of this journey resonated most with you? If this video opened something in you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone whose soul might be ready to hear this. Thank you for walking this path with us. Wherever you are in your journey, you are seen, you are loved, and you are never alone.